Okay, so we set up our base project. We have all the needed files for our game mode. So our game mode has all our own files here. Now let's get into setting up Gas Companion. All right. Okay, so we made our player state. The player state is what's going to handle all our abilities. Only on the player. The enemies will handle it on their own character blueprints. Okay, so as you can see on the right, we have Gas Companion. And it gives us options for granted abilities, granted attributes, granted effects, granted ability sets. And this is what we're going to use, granted ability sets. So we're going to go here, content, create a new folder, ability system. Then new folder, abilities. And another new folder, I'm going to say player. Since these are all going to be all the player abilities. Okay. And then over here, let's make one more folder. New folder, ability sets. Okay, now inside the ability sets, we're going to go to miscellaneous, data asset, and here we're going to look for ability set. So if you're not using Gas Companion, there's also another ability set, which comes default, but we're using Gas Companion, so you use that one. So we're going to call it DA for data asset, ability set underscore player underscore move basic or base. So the base ability set of the player. So this is what the player starts with as soon as you start your game. Okay, and as you can see, you can put granted abilities, granted attributes, and granted effects. But right now we don't have anything, so we have to create all of these, right? Okay, so let's fix this up. Okay, so first things first, we have to make the character move the mouse. So if I move the mouse, I want to be able to move the camera. And if I press WASD, I want to be able to move. So to do that, first we have to give the character a camera and the spring arm, so the camera is attached to something. So we go to writer, we go to the player character, and over here in our private section up top, we do U property, visible anywhere, open read only, category equal camera, and meta equals allow private access. And then class U SpringArmComponent, SpringArmComponent pointer, and then we call it SpringArmComponent. Now, so we need to attach the camera to the spring arm. So we do another one. Let's just copy paste this because it's the same. And class U camera. What's it called? Camera component. Pointer. Camera component. There's two more things that we need to set up Gas Companion. All right. So again, we paste our U property, and then we do class U GSCCoreComponent. Okay. And then we just call it GSCCoreComponent. And then one more, which is class UGSC ability input binding component. And GSC ability input binding component. Okay. So this core component gives us a lot of functions that allows us to interact with gas through this Gas Companion. All right. As soon as we come up with as soon as we open the blueprint, I'll show you all the functionality that this gives us. And this just helps us bind our inputs to our character easily. Okay, so this is the H file. And now we have to actually add these to the blueprint or the class. So we go here and make this smaller, make this bigger so you can see better. Okay. First things first, we do SpringArmComponent equals create default subobject. So this adds it as a default subobject. Use SpringArmComponent. And then we name it text SpringArmComponent. We're gonna comment Spring setup SpringArmComponent. So there's some more functionality that we have to do here, but let's do all the sub-objects first. CameraComponent dot is equal to create default subobject. Use CameraComponent. Then we name it text CameraComponent. And then we do GSCCoreComponent is equal create default subobject. Use GSCCoreComponent. Right. And then we name it GSCCoreComponent. And then one last one is GSC input ability input binding component. Let's create default subobject. UGSC core component. Nope, wrong one. Sorry. UGSC ability input binding component, and rename it GSC ability input binding component. All right. Now there's a couple more things we have to set up here in the spring arm. So we have to attach it to something. So spring arm component dot setup attachment. Setup attachment. We're going to attach it to the root, which is going to be the capsule component. You'll see when we open up the blueprint. And then we're going to set up SpringArmComponent dot set relative location. So it's going to attach to the root, but we don't want that. I want it to attach it to the back of the neck of the character. So we're going to offset this by f vector 0, 0 on the x, 0 on the y, and we're going to offset it by 70 on the z. So it's going to go up by 70 units. SpringArmComponent dot target arm length. So how far away this is from the character. We're going to do 450. And then SpringArmComponent dot use pawn control rotation. We're going to set that to true. SpringArmComponent dot inherit jaw true. SpringArmComponent dot enable camera lag. Camera lag equals to true. And the last one, camera lag speed, we're going to set it to 15. Okay. You're not going to notice this camera lag because it's so high. So it's going to snap. But if you start falling really fast, it will actually, you will actually feel it. If you want it to lag more, you give it a lower value. So it's the opposite, right? The higher the value, the less it lags. Okay, so for camera component, we have to attach that to the spring arm. So camera component dot setup attachment, and we attach it to the spring arm component. And camera component dot use pawn control rotation. We set that to false. And we set the field of view of the camera component. Field of view equals 75. You can change this to whatever you like. I like it at 75 right now. We'll see when we start playing the game if that's what we actually like. So set up camera component. And here we do setup gas companion. Okay. So that's pretty much everything we need for here. Okay, so everything looks right. Okay, so let's compile. All right, so let's open up our character. We go to viewport. So you can see we added the spring arm. It's attached to where the neck would be because we don't have a mesh yet. So let's add a mesh. So show this in another video, but we're gonna do it again. Here we go to content, and then we add. And at the top, add feature or content pack. And we're gonna add the third person content pack, right? We added. Perfect. So we don't need all the blueprints are given us. So this third person folder, we just delete it. We're making everything ourselves, right? So we delete that. We delete this level prototyping. We don't need that. Just clutter. And then what we do need is this is the mannequin and the animation blueprint, right? So it created a folder named characters, which we have a folder named character. So we're just gonna move our stuff from the folder named character to the characters folder. Move here. And then we're gonna delete the character folder. And then we're gonna have it here. So the reason why I moved one blueprint into the one they made is because moving all these references over to our character folder might break something. So you don't want to break all the references. So this has no references anywhere, right? Only on the game mode. If that breaks, you can just reset it. So this is why we moved the singular blueprint over to the other folder. Okay. So we open this again. Let's go open it again. And now we can set the mesh. We select Manny or Queen if you want. And then the blueprint, we select AVP Manny. As you can see, we got the character here. We have to offset it, -90, -90, so it faces the correct way. Okay, so that's it. Now we play. Our character's here, but we can't do anything, but we're there, right? Everything's set up correctly. Now we just need to set up our look and our move. So usually people would do it here, set up your input here and stuff. We're going to make abilities for this. So everything in our game is going to be an ability, right? So we have a lot more control on when they are allowed to happen, when they're not allowed to happen, etc. And I'll explain a little bit more of that when we get to that point. So we don't need to do anything else here. Oh, okay. So I said I was going to explain the GSC core component, right? So as you can see here, we added it in C++ and it's over here. These are all the events that we're allowed to call. So when you take damage, when your health changes, when your stamina changes, when your mana changes, whenever any attribute changes, on death, on post gameplay effects, etc., etc., etc. Whenever these happens, we can implement any of these delegates and use them inside our code. So we will have to do this ourselves, but this plugin already gives us all this functionality ready to be used. And the input component is here. We just set our input mapping. So this is what we're going to do right now. We're going to create an input mapping and a couple look and move, right? Okay, so we're going to make a, let's go to player. Here in this folder, we're going to do input. And then inside that folder, we're going to do in actions, but we're going to stay out here first. We're going to go to input mapping context, IMC, player movement. or player base. Player base. Because base functionality might include more than just movement. And then we go into the folder of actions. We go to input, input actions. We call it IA for input actions, and move. We open it up. And instead of a digital bool, we go to axis 2D. Then we save, close it, and then we duplicate it and input action look. And we duplicated it because we want axis 2D, right? All right. Now we go back to IMC player. Then we add an input mapping and we select our input look. And now we set up input look, which is to the axis, mouse XY to the axis. And we're going to add a modifier, which is negate. And the negate is only on the Y, so up and down, right? So the reason why we negate it is because our mouse moves up and down and left and right. So if we go up, our camera will look down. We don't want that. We want it when we move our mouse up, we look up, right? But it's set up that if you move your mouse up, the camera will go downward. So that's why we negate it. And then if you want to do controller, you just add to the axis again, but you find gamepad right thumbstick to the axis. All right, and this just needs a dead zone modifier, which is defaulted to 0.2 to 1, which is a good dead zone. That gets rid of stick drift. Okay, now we are gonna add another mapping, which is our move mapping. And this has a couple Okay, this has a couple options. So W, we're gonna add swizzle. Then we're gonna add another one, S, add a modifier, swizzle again, and another modifier, negate. And this negate stays with all X, Y, and Z. Gonna save. We're gonna collapse these and save again. Then we're gonna add another one for D, and D just stays by itself. There's nothing to it. And then we're gonna add A, and A has a negate, which just negates. So it's D, you move right, and A negates the right to go left, right? Very simple. And then if you want a gamepad, again, we do to the axis, but the left thumbstick right. And this one requires a dead zone and a scaler. So inputs give you from -1 to 1, but that will make you move way too slow, right? So you want the scaler. We're going to set it to 50. So it moves. So we're multiplying this -1 to 1 by 50. Okay. And dead zone, you keep it the same. If you don't want a dead zone, you can set it to 0. But we're going to, for this example, we're going to set it 0.2 to 1. Okay. So we set everything up. Let's collapse it. Collapse it, save it, collapse it again, save it, and close it. Okay. Now we can add it here. All right. So our input mapping is complete. So now if you play the game and then you do show debug, enhanced input, you can see as I move my mouse, the input look turns green. And if I move WASD, the input action move turns green. Right. And if you use your controller, you can see it right there. That's the movement. and the look the same. Okay, but now we actually have to move. So now we have to start creating our abilities. So we're going to create a move ability and a look ability. Okay, so we're going to go to C++. So we go here, we can close these, and then we create a new directory, call it ability system. Again, directory abilities. You'll see why we have so many subdirectories when we continue on with the series. In player, and one more movement. Okay, now we add a class, GSC ability, gameplay ability, and we name it my gameplay ability move. Let's do look first. And let's create it. Okay. So public, we're gonna do our constructor, you, my, and then protected, we're gonna override activate ability. Yeah, let me make this bigger. So if you're not using a writer, you can see all the variables, just pause and look at them. And then end ability. And once again, if you're not using writer, just pause it. Okay, now we're gonna make our look function. So u function looping callable category equals player movement. And then void look. It's gonna take in a constant vector. And we're gonna call it action value. Okay. Now we're gonna implement all these. And the last one. Okay, so our look is pretty simple. So if not action value dot is 0. So if the action value is not 0, so if we're actually moving the stick or the mouse, if my player state character, that's our character, is equal to cast my player state character. And then we're gonna get avatar from actor info. So this get avatar from actor info, whoever is the owner of the ability, that's the avatar that is returning. Okay. So this is why we can cast it onto our character, because our character is the owner of this ability. Okay. And this returns an actor, but a pawn actor. Okay. I know our player state handles our abilities, but this is returning a pawn. So then we do my player state character dot add controller yaw input, and then we just do action value dot x. And once again, my player state character dot add controller pitch input action value dot y. Right, and that's pretty much it for look. Now we're just gonna make another one right now while we're here. A real class. GSC GameplayAbility. And we're gonna call it my gameplay ability underscore move. Once again, so we can copy paste all this and just change the names or a couple of things. So we change the constructor name, and instead of look, we do move. and then we implement them. The way I'm doing this is Alt-Enter, highlight, Alt-Enter if you're using right. Okay, now for movement, once again, if not action value is 0, if action value is not 0, if my player state character, my player state character equals cast, we're going to cast it to my player state character, get avatar from actor info, and then we're going to do const f rotator, rotation is equal my player state character dot get control rotation. So it's going to get us our current rotation in the world. Then const effector. We're going to get the right direction, so we know which way to move. Okay, so we're going to do Kismet math library. Kismet math library. Get a right vector. And from the right vector, we're going to do f rotator. And we're going to pass in 0.f. And then rotation dot yaw and 0.f again. So that will give us the right direction. Again, constant vector. Forward direction equals Kismet math library. Get forward vector. And then f rotator 0.f rotation dot yaw and 0.f again. Now we do my player state character, add movement input. And then we pass in the right direction with action value dot x and my player state character dot add movement input forward direction with action value dot y. Okay. And that should be all. So that's simple movement logic. Okay, now that we have everything, now we compile. Now let's save everything. Always save in case stuff starts to crash. And when you press compile, you can see the progress of it. Oh, no, you can't right now. Never mind. Okay, so we compiled and it says, oh, what the hell is going on here, right? So if you see, unresolved external symbol virtual void, usually means you forgot to include this plugin into the engine. So we're gonna go over here to our build, and we're just gonna include abilities, gameplay abilities. Okay. And while we're here, we're gonna include, no, let's do this later when we get to it. So in case people skip. Okay, now we actually have to stop the engine. So we stop it up here. We refresh the solution. And then we build again. And then it should compile correctly. There you go. Now we can open up the engine again. Okay, now that it's open, we go to content drawer, ability system, abilities, player. And on player, we're going to make a new folder, call it movement. And we're going to make our abilities. So my gameplay, we called it move. So GA for gameplay ability, player, movement, or move. And then we're just going to create the other look while we're here. So we search for look. my gameplay ability look, select GA player look. Okay, so let's do move. Okay, so this is a gameplay ability. On the right side, you're gonna see, so this is part of GasCompanion. So these are some checkboxes that you can check. Gameplay effects, effect container map, we're gonna go over that later when we start applying damage or cost or cooldown. And then tags, this is why we're using abilities. This is literally the most important reason why we're using abilities, right? So we can tell this ability to cancel abilities with a tag that we do, or block any ability with a certain tag. So if you're walking and you don't want your abilities to work while you're walking, you just give it that tag, right? And then this is activation block tag. So if you have a certain tag, this ability will not activate. Activation required tag, that means you must have this tag for this ability to activate. So this is a lot of functionality that would take years or months to implement by yourself. Okay, so first things first, we're gonna instance in policy, we're gonna change it to instance per actor. So pretty much all your abilities, you're gonna have to change this to instance per actor. And that's it for now. Okay, so this is for pretty much every ability. We start off by committing the ability. And if you go to here and then there's gonna be a little star. If you click on the star, you're gonna make that a favorite. So when you search, you can just put CO and it will already pop up, right? It's like a fast getter of your favorite functions. Okay. Okay. So if we were able, so if the ability was able to commit, so you can read it, attempts to commit the ability, spend resources, etc. So if we don't have the resources to commit this ability, it will fail and we will just end the ability. We're gonna start this one too, make it a favorite. Okay. So if we were able to commit the ability, we're gonna move, right? So we made a function called move, but it takes in an action value. So how do we get an input action into a gameplay ability? So the only way I've been able to do it now is by making a function on the player and then calling that function here, right? Let's do end ability. So after we move, we just end the ability. So let's do that. So we're gonna make an interface. So we're gonna have to keep casting everywhere. So on character, we're gonna go on real class, interface, and we're gonna call it CharacterHelper. Just a interface that helps the character do stuff. Okay, so we don't need the CPP, we just need this one. Okay, now we're gonna define our function. New function, group a native event, grouping callable, and category equals character helper. And we're gonna do, so we need to get a f vector 2D and get input action look value. And while we're here, we're just gonna do the same thing for the move. Right? So get input action move value. And that's it. So that's our interface. We can close this out. And so our character has to implement this interface. So we go to our character. And then at the top, we just do public I character helper. Okay. So that included the interface to the character class. Now we're going to compile again. Now we're going to open our character and open full blueprint, And as you can see on the left side, these are the two interfaces. Okay. So we're going to implement them now. So input action move, and that requires a return value. So you do get input action move. Well, you don't do get, you just input action move. And this fancy little function, I wish I knew how to get it in C++, but I have no idea how. This, you just plug this into here. And then you do the same for look. So I look, and you just plug it into there. Okay, so we implemented these interfaces. And we just go to GameplayAbility, same as we did in C++. We do get avatar, actor from actor info. And we do, so get move, get input action move value. And this will get us the input action move value that we need. And we plug it in there. And while we're here, let's just do the look. So the look is practically the same. So we do commit ability. Then we see if it got committed. If it did, if it didn't, we end the ability. And if it did, we do get avatar from actor info. And then we do get look. And then we call that interface. And then we just call look. And we plug that in there and end ability. All right. Now we have to give these two abilities to the player, right? So we've created the abilities. Now we have to give it to them. So that is why we created these ability sets. So we're going to grant it abilities. We're going to do the plus sign and expand it. We're going to select the ability. So GA player move. And then we set the input that we're going to use. Input action move. And instead of activation started, we're going to do triggered. And then another one, player look. We give it the input action look. And again, we set it to triggered. And then we close this. But now we have to give this to the player. So we go to player state and we find ability system, abilities. So gas companion, granted ability sets. We expand that and we add it to him. And it's already working. You can see we move around. I don't like how this does this, so we're going to change that right now. So we're going to go to character, player character. We're going to search for rotation. Okay, so we're going to go here and we're going to orient rotation to movement. And we actually don't want to use controller rotation yaw. So we're going to go back to C++, go to our character. And then use, so we said use controller rotation yaw. Please use controller rotation yaw. We're going to set that to false. Okay. I'm going to comment this to set up movement mode. And then once again, we're going to come back here. We're going to compile it. After we compile it, we come back here. And we click reset this property to its default value. Okay. And now we should be good to go. Yep, everything works correctly. And if you want to debug your abilities, you press the button next to semicolon and between semicolon and enter. And then you toggle with your numpad and you toggle 1, 2. So default is 1 and 2. So you toggle that off and then you press 3 and your abilities will pop up. So those are the abilities that you have. Your gameplay effects and your attributes will also show up here when we set them up on the next video. All right. So next video, we're going to show you how to set up the attributes of the player. So like health, stamina, mana, and all that stuff. And maybe we'll add some combat attributes like damage and attack speed and all that stuff. All right. So see you in the next one.